as a marketer, you have many tools available to you. And today, Theresa Regli is going to be taking a deeper dive on those self-proclaimed digital marketing tools. You know, as many of you know, no one tool can solve all of the unique challenges that your organization has, regardless of how it's been positioned to you. So you might need one, two, or a few additional tools to really steer your ship, your organization in the right direction. So today, Theresa is going to provide an introduction to the digital marketing marketplace, and you're going to leave here with a better understanding of your technology options as a marketer. So a few quick housekeeping notes. For those of you on the call, as a follow-up, we're going to be passing along the slides for your reference. For the subscribers on the line, an archived version of today's webinar is going to be made available. And then finally, if you do have any questions as we move through the presentation, feel free to type your question up in the question window and we'll address it. So on this slide, just a quick overview for those of you who aren't as familiar with Real Story Group. What you're looking at here is a copy of our 2016 digital vendor map. And this visual shows the marketplaces that we cover and then the vendors that we cover in each of those marketplaces. You can find a copy if you find this helpful on our website at realstorygroup.com. But basically what we focus on is what we call content-based technologies. And what that means is that we're really looking at 7 different marketplaces and then following the products and the vendors within those 7 marketplaces. And I guess if you were to go high level and bucket those into 2 larger groups, what we're focusing on really is digital marketing and digital workplace technologies. And we've been around for 15 years looking solely at these content-based technologies. So we feel like we know them pretty well and we've seen their progression. I think there's probably 2 things I'd focus in on here. For every product that you see listed here on the map, we provide a deep dive evaluation, and we have a methodology on evaluating these vendors on a variety of different criteria, including use case scenarios and strategic considerations. The second thing that I'll mention in regards to our research is that we don't work for any of these vendors in any way. And because we do zero work for the vendors, we're able to really be the toughest critics among research firms by detailing the strengths of the vendors that we evaluate, but maybe more importantly to you as the research buyer, the weaknesses and where they fall short. So that's a quick overview. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Theresa Regli. She's going to guide us through the Digital Marketing 101 discussion today. Theresa is a principal analyst here at Real Story Group and recently a now published author. So Theresa, at this point, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you.
Great, thank you, Rebecca. Good morning or good afternoon, everyone, or good evening, depending on where you are. Thanks a lot for joining us today. We always appreciate your presence on our webinars and your eagerness to learn about what we do and the marketplace at large. So as I said, we're going to talk about, or as Rebecca said, I should say, we're going to talk about marketing technology or digital marketing technology 101. Rebecca's already given an excellent overview of our subway map, so I will jump right into the next level of detail. So the way I like to frame digital marketing today is really not just about what we think of as sort of the traditional digital medium. So we carry around our mobile devices, or we're used to interacting with digital marketing campaigns on our laptops or via different sort of internet networks devices, but it really goes quite a bit beyond that. And I like to use some of these examples when I introduce Digital Marketing 101, simply because we are talking more about kiosks, and we're talking more about screens that we see when we're walking around major cities that might be in a shopping mall or in a subway station or a digital billboard even, or even something that might be part of our refrigerator or our automobile. It's not just about the devices that we're sort of accustomed to experience in digital marketing. It's really much more about the connection to things like the Internet of Things and objects that we're passing on the street. These are just 2 examples. I take a lot of pictures of digital marketing experiences as I travel around the world, and these are just 2 quick examples where on the left you have a newspaper recycling bin in London that was showing advertisements as well as the news, as well as the status of the tube. This is, of course, an excellent opportunity for marketers to capitalize on a captive audience that might be walking down the street. And on the left-hand side, this is an Armani experience hallway that I was walking through in a shopping mall in Hong Kong. And it was fascinating to me because as you walked down the hallway, it almost felt like you were on a fashion catwalk because you saw different stages of the fashion show as you walked along. So this is really what digital marketing is all about. We might think it's just about emailing, or we might think it's just about the SMS on the phone, but it's a much more immersive and transmedia experience. So as a marketer, I would say put yourself in this frame of reference and think about your marketing campaigns in a much broader way than just the emails that you might be sending out on a regular basis. So I'm going to walk you through two reference models that are very important for you to think about as a marketer. And first, I can put this model out there, and then I'm going to put the marketplace in the context of these reference models. So as we think about digital marketing today, it's really about the customer. It's not so much about the product and what you're trying to sell. It's not to say that it's not about what you're trying to sell or the content or the product that you're marketing, but it's much more about putting the customer at the center and about thinking about what do you know about this customer. So as we think about that person that you're interacting with, usually there's certain intents that they have. And you want them to discover your brand first and foremost, or your product, and understand what do you have to offer. Then you want them to somehow transact with you as an organization. And then finally, you want them to give, or you want them to have, or you want to give them a sense of belonging and a real sense that they belong to your brand, that they identify with your brand in a really powerful way. And you need to set them on a path, basically a journey through your brand. And hopefully you're thinking about what your user journeys are, what your customer journeys are, and how you're sending these customers or your prospects, perhaps more importantly your prospects, down a path that has them towards transactions with you and then eventually gives them a feeling of belonging to your brand. So you might want to have them perusing images, watching videos. You might have them actually finally have products suggested to them, and then eventually they're hopefully buying things from you, purchasing things from you, giving feedback, and then eventually they're going to want to get updates about the products that they've purchased from you, and recommend to their friends, and hopefully become advocates for your brand over time. And then continue coming back and interacting with you in a way that, of course, not only builds brand loyalty, but hopefully increases your revenue. So all of these tasks in this blue circle are really about those journeys that you want those customers to have with you. And there's different business platforms that really enable these journeys to happen. So obviously they can't happen in a digital medium without having the right business platforms in place. And these platforms are the ones that we classify into the digital marketing marketplace. First, and my personal love and favorite would be digital and media asset management technology. This is DAM for short, as many of you know. You need e-commerce technology to actually drive and manage your transactions. You need customer support, of course, to make sure that you have the support that the customers need. Campaign and lead management, and this is going to be the focus of our webinar today. We have a major research area on what we call CLM. Campaign and lead management technology is a growing market, and it's a big part of digital marketing. Social engagement and analysis. So this is actually putting your message out on social media and potentially interacting and engaging with your customers on social media. And then finally, content and experience management, formerly sort of known as WCM. We still call it WCM, but the trendy term for it is really content and experience management for the web, or WCXM. So you think about all of these business platforms. This is really the digital marketing marketplace as a whole. All these different technologies fit into that, and then you have to put a wrapper of enterprise services around it that really delivers this content in a personalized way, in an effective way to the customer. So I put this reference model in front of you because this is how you need to think as a digital marketer. And as we have moved into the era of frankly, full-scale digital marketing, there's probably more digital marketing than non-digital marketing today. You should be able not only to describe the journeys of your customer very specifically, but you should be able to fill in that gray circle around the experiences to know what technologies are facilitating that. And then finally, also be able to fill in each technology for all of the items in the purple circle. And this, of course, at Real Estate Group is what our subscriptions help you do. It's what our research helps you do. It helps you make sure you have the right product in these different areas, and then, of course, benchmark yourself as far as how well you're doing in these different areas. All right, let's move on. So, what kind of technologies, fit into this marketplace? And this is sort of a more detailed view of the brand marketer's cocktail. I often like to use this particular analogy that being a digital marketer today is much like being a bartender, and you have to think about what's the best combination of liquids that you're going to put together to have that delicious drink. Well, it's the same thing. What's the right combination of technologies that you're going to put together to make the best digital marketing cocktail for your organization? There's a lot of choice out there, just like a bartender has a lot of choice when it comes to making a cocktail, and sometimes they put the wrong combinations together and it tastes terrible. You have the same risk as a digital marketer. You might fall prey to a very convincing salesperson and you might make the wrong choice, and we help you avoid that situation. So let's focus a little bit today, as I mentioned, on marketing automation and social engagement a little bit. We're going to talk a little bit about WCM and DAM as well. So let's look at a technical stack version of what I showed as the customer-centric reference model. Here's for those of you who are on the technical side on the call. I'll fly through this more architectural version. So all those applications that I talked about on the last two slides, they all have to be supported by an enterprise data foundation. And sometimes we have customers who come to us and subscribers who we have these calls with them, and they say, well, I've got all these great technologies in place, but I think I'm not quite using them as effectively as I could. And oftentimes the problem is that you don't have a strong enterprise data foundation. You haven't cleaned it up. You don't have good structured data. You don't necessarily know enough about your customers to market to them in a focused and effective way. So hopefully you've got these different repositories in place, and you're thinking about, first and foremost, making sure you have clean, solid, and as structured as possible data about your products, about your customers, and about how you want to market to them. And then you have your digital marketing applications. Here they are. As I mentioned, digital and media asset management. We've got web content management, marketing automation, and social engagement. The colored arrows here are very deliberate, right? Usually your web content management system, your marketing automation tool, your social engagement tool, they're all going to be using digital assets in some way. They're going to be using images, they're going to be using video, and they're going to be pushing those to different websites that perhaps have different topics or different product pages or different content topics. Marketing is also a very personalized experience, so you might have specific images and then also specific web pages that are potentially used as landing pages for a marketing campaign that is going to be managed by a marketing automation tool. And then finally, you might be pushing all that out to the different social channels. And then, as I mentioned, you've got all those business, marketing, and sales services that have to operate as a layer, a middleware layer on top of these content and engagement management tools that finally push out to the major channels. This is just, again, a different view of the customer-centric reference model. This is a more technical view of that. As you think about selecting these tools, as you think about putting these applications together and connecting these applications, integrating these applications, you need to figure out what's the tool that goes in each of these boxes, right? And that's what we do as a company. We help you figure out what's the right tool for each of these boxes for you, and then how are they going to interact with each other? How are they going to connect? How are they going to pass content, data, images, video from application to application, so that that personalized experience, once you get up into these channels, is really what you want it to be and as effective as possible. So let's define marketing automation. This is a tool that, this is a term that gets thrown around a lot today. I've been using the marketing automation hashtag a lot on Twitter because I see how much activity there is on that hashtag on Twitter. And I think that frankly, it's not very well defined. So this is how we define it. If you buy a marketing automation platform, you buy a tool to help you build, enrich, and then promote leads to a marketing database. So this is the CLM metaphor, or the CLM acronym that we like to use, which is campaign and lead management. So you need to have a good database. You need to make sure that you know who these individuals are. Maybe they responded to a mail campaign. Maybe they're even anonymous prospects who visited your website. You probably have a huge spectrum of different levels of information and data that you might have about your customers. Automation tools and marketing automation tools, campaign and lead management tools, they need good data in order to be able to market properly and to automate marketing in an effective way. And you've got sort of two forms, right? You've got B2B scenarios where in business to business, you're basically qualifying and nurturing leads. And usually you have some sort of Salesforce automation or customer relationship management platform underneath. This is very commonly what, for instance, Salesforce or Microsoft Dynamics is used for. And then in a B2C scenario, Marketing automation tools are more generally specialized in sort of offer management. You've bought this, get 10% off your next order. You bought this product, you might like this other product. And so they help you customize based on a buying history or based on preferences that you might be aware of based on your prior interaction. So this is really what marketing automation is all about. In our research, we use scenarios to evaluate tools and to rate tools. These are the digital marketing scenarios that we specifically focus on. So I talked about that difference between B2B and B2C management and nurturing, or lead and offer management. And this is the whole campaign and lead management functionality that you might be looking for. We find that vendors rate very differently in these two areas. There's vendors that really focus on B2B, and there's vendors that focus on B2C, and oftentimes, in fact, most of the time, they do not overlap. So depending on what you're looking for, you might need two tools. You might need a broader platform. It really depends on, again, what your use case is and what your focus is. So I go back to that customer-centric reference model and thinking about your customer journeys. What are they? How do you want your customers to experience your brand? You're probably going to need a very different tool based on what that experience might be like. Mobile marketing. There's very specific tools for mobile marketing and for mobile optimized campaigns. And then there's a whole different swath of technology that's really focused on social publishing, social media monitoring and intelligence, and also interacting with your customers via social media. If they're all complaining about your product on Twitter, you might want a way to respond to them in bulk, for example, rather than have to do it manually one by one. So very, very different scenarios here, very different technologies and tools cater to these different scenarios. One size does not fit all in any way, shape, or form. These are the very, very broad set of vendors that we cover in the digital marketing toolkit. So I talked about some of these different I would say functional areas or functional focus areas. Digital and media asset management, as I mentioned, is sort of a more foundational technology where you're storing your images and your video. Whereas the marketing automation tool is again focused on that campaign and lead management. I almost wish we'd sort of just call them that, campaign and lead management. That's why we call them campaign and lead management. And then the social media marketing tools here on the top right. And then finally down below, all of these vendors that call themselves web content and experience management, or WCM or WCXM vendors. Now there is some overlap among these tools, and that's perhaps the biggest challenge if you're a digital marketer and you're trying to select something in these particular markets, because we have web content management vendors who purport to do marketing automation. We have DAM vendors who purport to do social media publishing. And in some cases they do. That's not to say that you can't publish to, say, Twitter directly from your DAM system. There are DAM systems that do that. But they're not necessarily doing it at the same level of functional depth. They're not necessarily tracking all the likes or the retweets or all this sort of analytics that you might want. So when you hear a vendor say, oh, we also do X or Y, you should be skeptical, and you should say, well, at what level of functionality are you talking about here? What's really the level of technical depth that you can tell me you do this, right? Be sure to ask the tough questions whenever you're talking about a crossover application. And when I say a crossover application, if it's a vendor in that web content and experience management box and they're telling you they do marketing automation, you want to really understand what that means, and vice versa. So that's the caution that I have. There's a lot of choice in this space, as you can see. And we're going to talk about this in the context of the subway map as well in just a couple slides here. And I see there's questions coming in. We will get to those questions just a little bit later. I'm going to run through the slides and I'll answer questions for the last few minutes. So let me just show you a few examples of CLM, campaign and lead management. And this is an example from Marketo. And what you've got here is a set of tasks along the left-hand side, and they're calling this intelligent nurturing. And there's two separate categories here. One is a campaign list for prospects, and another one is for customers. So for people who aren't your customer yet, you might have a series of different campaigns, and that's what these are here in the second column here, where you might be trying to drive conversions. You might say there's a set of rules where you send them an initial email, and based on how they respond to that first email, you might send them a second email, but maybe that second email has 3 or 4 different versions, depending on how they behaved in the first email. So these tools allow you to have templates that you can vary in certain ways. Maybe there's a standard template, and then you have one part of the email that's different based on what you know about the customer. And you can set up automated transition rules where you say, as the examples I cited, you can do something different based on what you know. The customer rules are a little bit different because if you already have someone captured as a customer, you want to send them a welcome note, and maybe a few days later you ask them what they thought of the product, and then you try to get them to engage more with the brand, jump into the community, how to get started, refer a friend, ways that make them feel like they belong, ways of really engaging them further in who you are and what you do. So this is really I like this example because it's a core example of what campaign and lead management technology does, right? It allows you to set up a series of rules, and it allows you to manage interactions with some predefined templates to be able to interact in a semi-personalized way for different user types. One of the things that's pretty nifty about these tools as well is it allows you to actually score your leads based on how engaged they are. Or even based on what you know about them. So in this example, you can score this particular customer based on whether they're C-level, so are they very high up the food chain at the organization. Maybe you give them a few more points. If they opened a message, you might give them a point. If they clicked on a message, you might give them 5 points. Right? But if they were sent a message, well, that doesn't warrant adding any points because maybe you sent the message to thousands of people. But if they opened it, well, that's a big deal. If they clicked on it, that's an even bigger deal. And what this does with everybody in your database is it adds up scores, and then of course you have a particularly hot lead, then you know, okay, I need to cultivate this lead a little more. If it's a B2B scenario, you might want to give them a phone call because it's obviously they're pretty hot to trot on whatever it is that you're selling. So this lead scoring is a big part of modern digital marketing technology. It also allows you to test your different campaigns. So this is an example from a vendor called Acton, where they're promoting 2 different website promos, and promo number 1 was more effective than promo number 2. It got 162 views versus 88 views, and then it shows the total number of visitors and total clicks. So the idea here is you can send it to a smaller sample set, you figure out which one is more successful, and then you focus on the one that was more successful, and you send that to the bigger group. And this hopefully will drive more responses and more engagement in your brand. So finally, with web content management, a lot of web content management vendors today say they do marketing automation. And the reality is when we evaluate web content management tools, we're really evaluating at the core for things like web publishing and marketing portals, and really for the whole holistic experience of a web engagement use case, not necessarily for anything having to do with this campaign and lead management. So there's a little bit of crossover here in the sense that you might have a basic digital marketing site, and you might have landing pages, and you might have analytics about that particular website, and you might need to incorporate those analytics into your marketing automation tool. Or you might have a more advanced marketing portal where you're actually doing cross-sell and upsell of products based on what you know about that customer, whether they're logged in or not. So the point in showing these use cases versus the digital marketing use cases for campaign and lead management is that you can't really think of these 2 things separately, right? You need to think of the entire web strategy and your web publishing strategy in the context of your digital marketing strategy. And you need to understand, how will my web content management system interact with the people who are arriving at my website based on how I cultivated them as a lead? And do I use that web content management tool to manage my landing page, or is that in my marketing automation tool? And how do we mash up those analytics to get a full picture of the experience? So it's very important to consider these together and in context and along that entire path of the customer-centric journey. Where does the marketing automation tool end, and where does the WCM tool begin? And how are you going to get that holistic view of how they went along the path of your brand and of your content? So keep that in mind. It's a big challenge, and of course, we're happy to help you with that as needed. So just to come back to the subway map here as I get close to wrapping up, there's a lot of big vendors out there that you've no doubt heard of, and they're the ones in the middle of our map, like Microsoft and Adobe and OpenText and Oracle. They sell tools in every flavor of digital marketing. But the important thing to point out here is that even though they sell all these tools, they are not necessarily connected or integrated any better than if you bought 5 or 6 tools from the different extremities of our map. right? There's best of breed tools that have been acquired, and it's more a strategy than anything else. We often use this slide that is so important in the philosophy of selecting tools, which is the idea of a digital marketing platform is really quite mythical. It's more of a go-to-market strategy for these vendors than it is a technical reality. So if you are a buyer, don't be fooled into thinking that if you buy everything from one vendor, it's going to be magically connected. The work is still there. And if you're new to this world, which I imagine many of you are because this is a 101 seminar, just keep this in mind. It's not going to be better, cheaper, faster to buy it all from one vendor. So I'm going to hand it back over to Rebecca here while I look at the questions. She's going to tell you a little bit more about our research and some of our tools here. I'll let her talk about some of these decision tools that we have while I take a brief look at your questions, and then we'll come back to those. Rebecca, do you want to say a few words here?
Sure, perfect. Thanks, Teresa, and thanks for sharing your perspective. So hopefully you found today's outlook helpful, whether you're looking to take better control of your digital marketing technologies, maybe you're looking to divorce a current vendor, or maybe you're in the market for a whole new system. So as Teresa mentioned, the research is now available on our site under the name Campaign and Lead Management. So with that, you'll find that we cover 14 key products from 10 different vendors, and the research was just updated a few weeks ago to reflect two major changes. So first, the research has enhanced evaluations format, and so what we mean by that is that the evaluations, as before, take an in-depth look at the products, but they also it also answers the all-important so what question for the enterprise buyer. And then secondly, we've significantly increased the coverage of strategic considerations to help you go beyond the technology to a more holistic understanding that's required for your procurement decisions. So those are the updates, main updates, along with all of the vendors and the campaign lead management. You can get access to our research via a report download, a subscription. We also have subscriptions that have advisory time. All subscriptions come with our tools. So you'll see on the left-hand side of the screen our Real Quadrant tool, which is a shortlist generator. So the goal of this tool is really to get you to the right shortlist and help you navigate through the research the exact areas where you should be focused based on your organization's specific use case needs and scenarios. And then also, once you get to that short list, we have a vendor head-to-head comparison tool. So that tool allows you to compare those vendors side by side based on your specific use cases and needs. So it's a great way to, it's interactive, but you can really pinpoint the areas of the research that you need to get to in a real timely way. So that's kind of an overview of the space. Teresa, I know we're a little short on time. I want to throw it back to you, see if there's any more questions.
Yeah, fortunately there wasn't too many questions, so I hope that means I was pretty clear. I would like to talk about this last slide here in terms of what the vendors offer versus sort of the reality of our current situation as marketers. So I'll just kind of wrap it up with this. And there was some people who were talking about in the questions window, sort of more comments where people were talking about campaign and lead management vendors kind of going in different directions, and that some sort of approach it from this idea of web experience management, whereas others approach it more from the the email management side. And somebody asked, do I agree with that? And the answer is absolutely, I agree with that. I think there's been two completely different directions that have converged in this marketplace, and I like using this graphic to kind of illustrate that because the vendors are pitching themselves very differently. And this was developed by our research director in this particular space, which is and his name's Kashap, and he calls it the capacity gap and the hyperbole gap. And we have this technology capability spectrum in the MarTech world where there's organizations have a particular capacity, right? Your organization has a particular capacity, and that capacity can be met by the right vendor if you select the right vendor and you have the right people in place and you have the right process in place, right? It's not just about selecting the right technology, which is why we have our benchmarking tools to help you figure out where you might fall short on people and process as well. So it's not just about this gap between your capabilities and the system capabilities. It's also about understanding what the hyperbole gap is, right? And that's what our research is about, is really identifying where the vendor is exaggerating, where the hyperbole is, so that you can make sure that you're not falling into that. Because if you do trust technology to solve problems that technology can't solve, you're going to be in a very messy situation. So I would just put that out there as a final thought to you as you go into this world of digital marketing, if you are new to it, and hope that you can test our tools. That'll give you some feedback as far as where you are on the capability spectrum, and then whether or not you have those correct tools in place. One last question that I'll answer before I have to run to my lunch with an RSG subscriber today, so I can't be late. Somebody asked, what is our opinion of ROI tools? And I think this is a good this is a good final question to close out the webinar. I think that ROI tools are mostly a joke. I think it's important to point that out. Vendors put those out there because it often helps give the perception that if you buy their technology, it's going to solve problems that you might have, or the challenges that you might have. The reality is digital marketing tools are not really about ROI so much as they are the cost of doing business and the risk of being left behind. If you're not doing digital marketing and you're not doing it effectively, you're going to lose out. You're going to lose to your competitors. These technologies are expensive, and they cost a lot of money to buy, and they cost a lot of money to implement. You have to do it in one way or another, or you're going to miss out, because this is the way the world is going. The real key is what you're going to lose if you don't do it. So I think the ROI calculators, they tend to miss out on factors like people investment, like taxonomy investment, like metadata that you have to do, and getting the right people in place, and all the costs that are associated with building a technology are not covered in these ROI calculators. So I wouldn't count on them. I think you really need to think of it more as a cost of doing business and the cost of winning in a very competitive marketing landscape. So I'll leave it with that, and I hope you've enjoyed the webinar today. As Rebecca said, please visit our website. You can download an excerpt of our research. You can try out our tools, and we appreciate you joining us today and look forward to hearing from you in the future. Thanks so much. Cheers.